PT.
Gotcha. Welcome in. It is Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. Good to have you guys alongside. We are deep into the season. We are getting deeper into the playoffs. Chris Childers here. We have a great show today. RFK, as you know, we're not in the playoffs anymore, but building for next season. Still lots of important things to race for. We saw Chris Buescher get in victory lane a couple of weeks ago, and I loved Graves, Scott Graves in the aftermath's like, to hell with the chase. We're in victory lane. It feels so good. So clearly, it doesn't matter. We want to get in victory lane, and that is the goal the rest of the season. We have a fun show. Mike Herman Jr. back on spotter for the number 17, Chris Buescher. We'll get into that Watkins Glen win and what he saw because that final lap was pretty damn cool a couple weeks ago. So we'll get into that, the nuances of it, the emotion. We'll talk about Talladega coming up this week, which is fascinating from a racing perspective, maybe even more fascinating from a people watching perspective at Talladega, because it is, I was just in Alabama for the football game this week. There was a lot of NASCAR ads everywhere, and you attract a very interesting group when it comes to Talladega, so it's going to be fun. But Mike Herman Jr. is with us. Mike, good to have you back in the saddle. Congrats on spotting a win a couple weeks back. How you been, man? Good to see you.
Been good. Obviously, getting that victory at Watkins Glen was good for the 17 car. Obviously, we would have liked to have done it earlier in the year and come close a couple times, but the ultimate goal each year going into the season is to win a race, and you got 36 races to do it, and it just happened to take a little bit longer this time to seal that victory. But anytime you can win a Cup Series race, it's very, very important for our team and everybody that supports us. So we were just happy to get that done, and go try to do it again here before the end of the season.
Well, we thought that it happened in Kansas the first time this year, and we thought for a few seconds, and everybody was celebrating, and I'm sure you were thrilled, and Graves was thrilled, and everybody's on the pit wall there. And then seconds later, we find out that's not the case. What was it like going back? Because you just said, like, if split second different, then Watkins Glen means a hell of a lot more a couple weeks ago, and we're on to the round of 12. So was it spooky at all for the team going back to Kansas over the weekend?
Yeah, I don't think it was spooky, but it definitely was in the back of our minds, because when you go back to a racetrack the second time or go back to it any time, you're going to go back and do your pre-race prep work. So you're kind of forced into watching it. You have to go, and you got to be real with yourselves and sit down and figure out what we could have done differently to try to seal the deal and win that race back in the spring. So when you set foot back on the property, it does come rushing back, and you get into practice, and you do think about the what ifs, but you have to put it behind you and know that it's a whole entirely different weekend, and try to execute the best you can, and not think about what happened in the spring. But it's it definitely was there this week, that's for sure.
I bet. And as I was watching the race on TV, I said, so where is the finish line actually? Do we actually know where the finish line is at that place? It was a little weird. And for me as a fan who doesn't, I fan short for fanatic, I was a little pissed sitting watching that racetrack and watching the 17 and the 6 go round and round, just knowing what could have been. So it is what it is. You got to put it behind you, certainly, as professionals, but the fans maybe get a little bit too hung up on those things, and certainly I was in that state of mind this past weekend. How'd you feel about Kansas overall? Chris finished in 11th, certainly ebbs and flows throughout the race. How would you describe what happened this past Sunday in your words?
Well, I mean, it really goes to show you how hard they are to win, because we go back to the exact same racetrack that we were part of the closest finish in NASCAR history and come out on the wrong end of that. But we had a car to win the race that evening. You come back here in the fall, and you expect to duplicate that again. And we just absolutely did not have the speed that we had in the spring. And it just goes to show you that it is the exact same racetrack. It's still Kansas, but it's different weather conditions, different time of the year. And, your competitors are different. They've worked on their stuff. They've made their things, their cars better since the last time we was there. And, we didn't qualify great, and we had to dig ourselves out of a hole all day long, and to come out finishing 11th, and we were hoping to get that top 10, but that I said that was overachieving because we started 25th on the day, and we had tough time on restarts with fire off balance, and our long run speed was really good, but it would take you a long time into the run to get to where your advantage is over everybody. So it just shows you how tough it is to win these races, and when you have opportunities to win them, you got to take it because they are very tough to win.
Well, it happened a couple weeks ago at Watkins Glen, and you had a chance to spot that one, and we'll get into that in a little bit because certainly that was exciting for everybody. And the last lap was, you could just tell what it meant to everybody that was with RFK, everybody on the 17 team to just be in position. And again, listen to the radio, listen to Graves, and it will put the season in a nutshell right there of what that meant to the team. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. But Talladega is coming up. Super speedway, very eclectic. As a spotter, is this one you enjoy?
I wish I could say yes, but the style of racing that we've been doing at Talladega and Daytona here lately is really, really frustrating. We're just in a box, and we're not able to make the moves that we've been able to make with different generations of cars and different packages and different style of racing. So going into these races right now is, I'm not going to lie to you, it's a little bit frustrating because you don't know exactly how to play the race out, how to go into it, strategize what you should do, because there's 2 or 3 different ways of looking at it. And sometimes going into a race weekend like this, we're just kind of take the winged approach this week and go about it that way, because it's really tough right now to put yourself in a position to win these races, because it's just really a crapshoot right now.
All right, let's peel back that onion a little bit deeper, because I think that's an interesting topic right now. Going back to the first race of the year, I mean, I think the laps were about 5 seconds slower because pack racing the whole time, saving fuel the whole time, teaming up with your manufacturer, whether it was Ford, Toyota, Chevy, everybody ran in packs. The moment you try to make a move, they'd be waving you off. They'd get all pissed off. And Buescher was like, dude, are we not in the Daytona 500? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Has that been addressed with the manufacturers? Has it been addressed? So how do the other teams feel? Do we want to be saving fuel, or what? Why have we gotten to this point, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, from a team perspective, none of us really want to have to save fuel and do the way that we're having to do now. But it's obviously it's a strategy play that basically you can predict will be faster to be able to run the stages and to complete the race. If you save fuel, you're going to have a faster pit stop. You can jump track position that way to get yourself into the final 5-10 laps of a run to really race hard then. But that's not the way that we prefer to do it. We would rather be able to go out there and just race hard and have multiple lanes to work with and race 3-4 wide and protect lanes, try to move lanes forward. But it's right now the fuel savings game it dominates the topic, and going into this race this weekend, it's going to be a factor again. It's a balancing act between keeping your track position and saving enough fuel to be able to have a fast pit stop. So we've learned that it's hard to save fuel in the back because it's hard to ever get that track position back. So it's a balancing act, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out this weekend, because Talladega, is a little bit different than Daytona, but it'll look real similar.
I would imagine so. Mike Herman Jr., our guest here, spotter for the number 17 Ford Mustang. Chris Buescher this week will be in the next Latal, number 17, and Keselowski's got the BuildSubmarines.com number 6 this weekend. So both cars going to be looking slick around that track in Talladega. So what I'm hearing from you, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but in so many words, I'm hearing we have to do it because if we don't, somebody else will, and they're going to be faster. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, you're correct on that. Okay. But you also have to look at it when in Cup Series racing. These teams think a lot alike, and next thing you know, the field ends up looking like everybody's doing the exact same thing. So if everybody is saving fuel, then you got to figure out, like, well, you can't just be in the back of the pack, or you're just going to come right back out and cycle through in the exact same position. So you're going to see a lot of pogoing this week, to where, like right now, Cup racing, I think that if you look at it, like it's like the Peloton and Tour de France bicycle racing. It's a lot of the same type of thing. You want to lead the race, but then again, you're burning too much fuel when you're leading a race. So there's a sweet spot somewhere in the middle there, to where you can achieve both and keep track position and save fuel for a fast pit cycle. So it's hard when everybody else is doing the exact same thing, but sometimes that's what you're forced to do.
I can't even imagine. And frustrating, I think, is the right word. It's one of those things you want to get out there, open it up, and you just can't, because you won't be in the best position to win a race. I'm curious about this, and I think this goes along the same lines. And again, we're talking to Mike Herman Jr., spotter for the number 17. Now that the playoffs are out of the equation for both teams in RFK, do the strategies for how you spot and how the crew chiefs call the race, do they change now that stage points don't matter? You're not going for, any kind of, points in particular. So now is it all we care about is where we're at the end of stage 3? Is that where we're at now as a team?
Yeah, that's the number one thing, is our goal is to try to win the race. We can't go and say that stage points don't matter completely, because we're still racing for our final points position.
Yeah.
However, they're not as important to us as the guys that are still in playoff contention. We benefited from that this past weekend in Kansas, to where we were able to flip a stage because we were concerned about scoring stage points, to where we could pit short of the stage when one of the cautions come out, and then the playoff guys had to stay out to score their stage points. And so we're able to gain some track position by doing that. It'd be the exact same strategy. That particular thing helped us in Watkins Glen. It'll be the same way in Talladega this weekend. There will be guys that have to score those stage points, and I feel for them, because I hate that. I hate the only thing I don't like about stage racing is that sometimes you have to make that decision to go for those stage points, and it's going to affect your final finishing position at the end of the day. I hate getting put into that box and into those situations, but that is the one positive right now. We would trade it to be back in playoff contention, but it is one thing that we don't have to worry about as much.
I'm curious, as a spotter, how much are you involved? I know we've talked about this in the past, but kind of another layer of it. The next day on Monday, after you've spotted a race, is there a meeting with you and McCall, or with you and Graves at that point? Is it a full, how close are you connected with the crew chief throughout the week? I'm curious what that relationship is like.
Me and Scott Graves have worked together for a long time. We were both with Chris when he run Xfinity, and when I first got here in 14 and 15 at RFK. So, me and Scott have worked together for a long time. So when you have that relationship of working together, 6, 7, 8 years in, and that kind of thing, everything kind of flows throughout the week, to where I'm doing my job, he's doing his, Chris is doing his job, and everybody else is. So, we have a unique dynamic on the 17. Like myself, I've been on the 17 car for 11 years now straight. So, everybody just kind of, it's a well-oiled machine. We communicate, whether it be by, email and other means, to where we're not always in constant contact sitting down face to face, but on Monday afternoons we do have a team meeting. We call it our post-race debrief, to where both teams sit down in the same room, to where we all go through how the weekend went. So you go from there, and then you flow in and you do it again midweek around Wednesday. Me and Chris, we meet, just me and him, and go over race strategy stuff from a driver spotter perspective. Then that leads into another pre-race meeting, getting prepared for, say, Talladega this weekend, to where everybody's involved.
So you've been with this team, the 17, for 11 years, you said, on top of what you were doing in Xfinity with Chris and all that?
Yeah, yep.
So you were with Ricky Stenhouse in that group?
Yep, I come here in 2014 to spot for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. on the 17, and then I've been here ever since. So I think I'm probably the one of the longest, if not the longest, tenured guy on the 17. A lot of faces have come and gone and changed, yeah. But it's kind of nice, to have that constant of looking at that same car number all the time.
You've seen crew chiefs come and go. You've seen drivers come and go. It's got to be weird. Does your spotting technique change at all based on the driver, or is it just how you do it?
This far into my career, no,
Okay.
it doesn't really change.
Did it
I
before?
think, I guess early on, as you're still working on your craft, it's probably, you're probably just changing because you want to be better. But then now that you've, this far into to my career in my role as a spotter, I guess more when you work with new guys, because I continue to work with new guys, whether it be in Xfinity or truck, ARCA, things like that. They want to adapt to what you do, because they know you've been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
They're coming to you. They're hiring me because they know I've got the experience, and I've been to all the tracks and so many races under my belt. I mean, I average 130 some races a year spotting. So, they know they're getting that experience. So they just probably more adapt to me than vice versa.
You know what I'm curious about? How somebody, not necessarily how they get into it, but how you get good at it and how you know that you can be good at it as a spotter. And again, we're talking to Mike Herman Jr. here because I watch racing every single weekend. I watch NASCAR every weekend. I watch IndyCar. I watch F1. If it's on IMSA, usually if there's a race on my television or YouTube, I'm going to watch it. If I got something to do, then so be it. But, more times than not, I watch a lot of racing. I wouldn't have any idea how to go up there and spot. How do you know you have it? And really, how bad are you at the beginning? And does it take, is this a craft that really you have to do it in order to know what you're doing? Is that the best way to describe it? Because everybody's got to do it for the first time eventually, right?
Yeah. It takes experience, but I don't know. It's one of them type of jobs
Like,
to where.
what don't you know at the beginning, would you say? What do these young guys don't know?
Yeah,
about
I think that's a hard question to answer, but I guess they just don't know what they don't know,
Yeah.
because they just don't have the experience in the scenarios that they've been through. And I think that a lot of times that new guys come in and they have the lingo down pat, they have the voice for radio, they sound good, but sometimes it just doesn't connect with what's actually happening on the racetrack itself. And getting those two things to connect and how you sound and the delivery of it to where the driver can actually understand it at 200 mile an hour, being 3 wide in traffic, that's the part that takes some time. They sound good, it's just not connecting with what's actually happening on the racetrack, because I've learned over the years I've got different things that I say that's whether we're on offense or defense, whether we're moving forward or we're moving backwards or the car around us is closing or we're pulling away. It's you have different things that you say in different moments, and it's hard for me because I can't stand back and really watch myself do my job. I can go back and listen after the fact, but I can't critique myself while I'm actually doing it so much. So it's hard to actually even go and explain because I'm just so much in the moment. But going back to when I first started spotting, I was coming out of a long short track driving career, and basically I just spotted the way I wanted to be spotted for when I drove, and what it was I was actually looking for out of a good spotter. And I just have always took that mentality and just built on it from there.
So here's what I'm hearing. It is, and I think spotting's an interesting job, and there's probably people listening. They're like, I'd love to get into NASCAR and be up there and spotting, and how do you do it? What I'm hearing from you is that it's a God-given talent. You really can't teach it because there is a motor skill going on. There is the eye-mouth coordination that is important, but you can get better at it. It's not like you're going to come in and be great, but there's got to be some level of, motor skill and instinct that's there. And then from there, it can be developed. Is that hit it for a spotter?
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of what we do is anticipating what you see. Because a new guy, the normal person or somebody new doing it, they can spot what they see. When you add the element in of anticipating what's going to happen, because you've got the experience to know, and the driving experience that I had helps me tremendously. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be a former driver, but you cannot replace that experience of being in the seat and knowing what it is that you're actually looking for from a spotter. So there's a lot of the best spotters in the business have never driven a race car. I think those are probably more of the unique ones and the rare cases, because my driving experience does help me a bunch, and I apply it all the time. But once you add that element of anticipating what you're actually going to see, so you're up there actually predicting the future, but you're not guessing at it. It's based on experience.
Mike Herman is with us. He is the spotter for the number 17. This is a fun conversation. I really think it's interesting, and spotting is such a crucial part of the world that we're in. And how many times do we get to know like what goes into it, and what the process? And I just think it's cool. I think it's a really cool thing. It's a fun conversation today with Mike Herman. Take a break and continue it when we come back right here. It's Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing on Sirius XM NASCAR Channel 90. We're back here. It is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. Great to have you guys with us as we are getting deeper into the season. Talladega round 2 is this weekend. It is one of the most interesting people watching events that you'll ever have in NASCAR. There's no doubt about that. Talladega, for those that don't know, really not far from Birmingham, but it feels like a different world than Birmingham, because I go to Birmingham all the time. Talladega as a whole, it might as well be a different country, but especially race weekend. Mike Herman's with us. He is the spotter for the number 17 for Chris Buescher. We've been talking for the last several minutes, and you mentioned earlier how Talladega not as exciting as you want because of all the pack racing and the fuel saving. What kind of event is it, though, when you just show up? Do you get all the exposure to the weirdos, or are you kind of in your own cocoon when you're spotting?
Yeah, well, we used to get exposed to it all because the spotter stand actually used to be in the very top of the grandstands, to where we had fans directly in front of us. Now they have built a new race control tower that we're on top of, which is it's a better view, but we don't have as much room. The biggest racetrack on the circuit's got one of the smallest spotter stands, so we're packed in way too tight up there. So I kind of prefer the old spotter stand that we used to have with the fans, but it was always cool to be amongst the people like that, and you could see the passion that they brought to it. And when things would happen on a racetrack, that they could tell you about it because they were right there. So that always was an interesting aspect of it.
No doubt. It's fascinating. Talladega people ask me what are these races like when you go to Bristol or you go to, Daytona or whatever. And I'm like, they're awesome, but you really want to get an experience that's going to leave a lasting impression. Go walk around Talladega.
That's for sure.
Do you have any lasting memories of some of the more interesting things you've seen while visiting Alabama, Talladega?
Yeah, it's like the one way I would describe Talladega is like, obviously I've never been to Burning Man. I've never had time to it. I just know that it's a festival that sets up out in the middle of the desert and turns into this one huge community. Well, that's what Talladega is. It turns into like you were talking about the difference with Birmingham. It literally is almost its own country. It turns into a community of people that's bigger than the size of a lot of towns and small cities. It's unbelievable. And driving through the infield and seeing all the people, because everybody's there for different reasons. There's some that's probably there that could care less what's going on in the racetrack. They're just there for the party. And then you got the diehard race fans that's there because Talladega is always an extremely good race. And, it's always neat, driving in on Sunday morning and then just going through all the haze of campfire smoke left over from the night before. But it's probably the top, just number one destination on the circuit to be able to just experience it from all levels.
It's good. It really is good. It is a cultural experience, I think, is the absolute best way to say it. And I would imagine seeing like the campfire smoke the next day, you feel like you've left a war zone in some respect. You're like, what in the hell just happened here?
Yep.
But it's Talladega, and that's the best way to put it. It is Dega, And it is something. It is a lot of fun. Hopefully the racing ends up being more fun on Sunday, and we can stop all the fuel saving like you talked about. For fans, it's frustrating. I mean, that's the thing. It's interesting because, like you said, it's the fastest way. So if somebody's going to do it, they're going to have the advantage over the other manufacturers that don't. But I wonder how fans will factor in at this point if they can, I don't know what could be done from a NASCAR perspective, but certainly like Daytona at the beginning of the season, you get so fired up for the race, then the race happens and you're like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
This is a lot of just waiting till the end for the chaos.
You
know what I'm saying? Like, we got to do something about it, don't we?
Yeah, and it's it's just a fundamental thing. It's going to take some fundamental changes. We can change tires now faster than we can put fuel in the car. So the least amount of fuel that you're going to put in the car on a pit stop, you've already got what tires you're going to change that needs to be done out of the way. And if you could put less fuel in it, it's going to be a faster pit stop. You're going to get off pit road quicker. But there's so many other things that has to go right. Your green flag pit entry has to be perfect. You can't lose all the time that you just saved by saving fuel. You can't lose it on green flag entry. When we all fan out coming on the pit road, you got to execute that well. And then when you leave pit road, you got to be with your alliances, with the guys that you're wanting to draft with. And then once you get back on the racetrack, it's a dogfight then. But I think that from a fan perspective, I just would say just be patient. We're just kind of starting with the appetizer when we're out there making laps, but we are jockeying for position, trying to get ourselves in the right spot. But one thing that it has created after a green flag pit cycle, it is 100% chaos from there. Like after a green flag pit cycle, there's no more fuel savings. Then we are going hard, so it just turns into more of a sprint race at that point.
Yes, it does, and it takes a long time typically to finish a handful of laps and several overtimes that end up happening and lots of cleanup sessions. But that's super speedway racing. And you know what? We love it. We really do as race fans. We look forward to those tracks. And they're really so integrated into the history and the DNA of the sport when you think of the super speedway. So it's going to be fun this weekend. And hopefully we can see the 17 and the 6 in a good position when it's all said and done. Back to Watkins Glen, speaking of good positions, the 17-1, that's a whole different animal from a spotting perspective. I'm curious about those kind of tracks because we bring in different kinds of racers for those. We have those, those ringer guys, and Chris beat one of the ringers to win the race. But from a spotting perspective, is it different for you? Are you comfortable when you're in a Watkins Glen situation? How different are those?
It's definitely different, but I've been part of a lot of road racing over the years, and even though I have a short track background, but obviously if you're going to be at the top levels of NASCAR, you've been part of a lot of road racing, and it's even more so now where we only used to have 2 a year. Now it's usually 6 or 7 a year. But the unique thing about myself from a Watkins Glen, a road course perspective, is I'm not the only one then, where I'm used to this weekend at Talladega, I'll be the only guy on the radio spotting, where at Watkins Glen there was three other guys on my spotting crew. I had Steve Barkdahl in the S's, Jonathan Davis in the bus stop, and then Tom Legeman off turn 5 and 6. And the unique thing from those guys' perspective is they've all done my job full time. So they have all been primary spotters, and they're veteran guys that have been around the sport for a long time. And it was just really awesome to put that group of guys together that ends up calling the race and getting that win, because it meant a lot to my team of spotters to be part of a win again.
I'm sure it was unbelievable for you guys at the end, just to be together and to have that experience and to do it as a team. And for Chris, how would you describe the last lap and the strategy and what was going on the radio in Watkins Glen?
I think we approached the last lap just like we really did any other lap. You just once you get into a position to where you're in P2 like that, you got to figure out a way to get by, and then your instincts kick in. And I know Chris we're all molded into the same image in this 17 car, and we're going to fight to the end. We don't quit, and just because we lost the lead there coming off of turn one on that restart didn't mean we were going to roll over and quit. And I think that just Chris dug deep and didn't give up and knew that we still had an opportunity to win. And then from the spotter perspective is just to remain calm and just continue to feed the information. And that's one thing that was if you go back and listen to the audio, you can hear Barkdahl coming off the S's relayed a message to Jonathan JD that was in the bus stop that he was closing, and that was over channel 2. So Chris didn't actually hear that, but that was an important transmission to alert not only Jonathan in the bus stop, but Tom too, to know we're still in this thing, to stay on your toes here. We've got an opportunity to still win this race. That we're closing here. We're not fading back. And then it was just extremely gratifying to hear how my guys called the race and how calm they were. And when the clear call come across the radio, like I couldn't even see that at that point in time, except for on a monitor in front of us. But I was pretty stoked to hear that, because I knew we had just took the lead, so that was good.
Oh, yeah. Is it weird when you're at a road course because you're not talking constantly, you're not looking at the car constantly, the car is moving away from your vision? Does that add any anxiety or could it? Because you said you stayed calm. Is it harder to stay calm when the car's not always in your eyesight?
It could. If you didn't have the right group of guys working with you, and I had absolutely the right group of guys working with me, and like I said, they're all veterans, so you trust each position, and each guy is locked in, and they're gonna feed the information that needs to be fed, and they're not going to overdo it. They're not going to cheerlead or get excited or anything like that. So it gives me a level of calmness myself to know that I've got the right guys in position, and if you feel like you have a weak link somewhere, then you get anxiety of it because you're used to doing this job by yourself and being in control of everything, and you wish that you could be in every spot on the racetrack, but you can't. So it just goes back to putting the right group of guys together, and I know that I had a really good team of spotters with me.
It was a heck of a group and a great win, and satisfying for all at the end. And Graves let us all know, you know what? The heck with the chase. This feels pretty good. This feels pretty damn good. And it really did, man. It's one of those, though, it's bittersweet because you look back to Kansas and some other opportunities and what could have been fighting for a championship. But you know what? Victory lane is victory lane, and it's a good place to be. There's no doubt about it. Mike, a pleasure. It really is great to hang out with you and pick your brain about the spotting world. Thanks so much for coming on again.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's good to be back, and obviously we'll try to do it again in the future and hopefully win some more races.
Absolutely, including this one would be fun. And Talladega, always a good race to get a W in. We'll take a break. We'll come back, and Brandon Lee is going to hang out with us today, one of the men behind the scenes here at RFK, the Senior Director of Communications. Will go through the season, what it's like to have been at the track for all the emotions throughout the year. We'll do that next with B. Lee right here. It's Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. We're back here. It is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. Chris Childers here. We have the fabulous Brandon Lee hanging out for the rest of the show, who is the Senior Director. He's fancy of communications for Roush Fenway Keselowski. Mr. Lee, a pleasure as always. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Chris. How about yourself?
I am fantastic. Brandon Lee is a rock star. He's everywhere you want to be when you're at the racetrack. He's running around. He's here, there, and everywhere. It's good to have you because this has been such an interesting year. And I feel like you're the perfect guy to kind of describe the emotion of the year because you've been at the track, you've been around, you've, had a chance to document it all. If you could put it in, I don't know, a couple of sentences, what has this season been for RFK?
Yeah, it's definitely been a roller coaster, and I think I've said that before, maybe on here, but it really has. You start these things and they're so long, and we started out really good, had a really good, I would say, first quarter. Both cars did. Then Brad wins Darlington in May. And then you get into the summer stretch, which is kind of tricky because you want to kind of ease into it. But by the time you get to the end of the summer, the playoffs are here. So um, we didn't do as well as we wanted to, kind of the middle, later part of the summer, which led to the playoffs. We obviously know what's taken place over the last few weeks. So all that to say, it's kind of been, up and down, really with both teams, right? Chris and the 17 team, they've had some really interesting scenarios at the racetrack throughout the year where maybe they had a tire go down with, you know, 30 to go running fifth, or something just crazy happens. I mean, you take Darlington, for example, when Brad won, and that was literally the word roller coaster within itself. We thought Chris was the guy. We were ready to go to victory lane for Chris, and next thing we know, Chris is wrecked and Brad goes to victory lane. So that moment within itself is kind of an epitome of our season in my mind. So it's been back and forth, but you'll take the wins where you can get them. That's what I told somebody after Watkins Glen. You never know when the next one's gonna happen, so you'll take them as they come to you.
Take them when you get them. There's no doubt, right? That's all. That's all you can do. Watkins Glen, take me through that emotion afterward when Chris finally gets through, finally gets the win. What was that celebration like? And what was it like for you to be around and to see the emotion on the dudes' faces that are part of the 17 car?
Yeah, it was kind of twofold for me. One, what you just said, that team has been trying all year. They've been really close, obviously, in a couple of cases we've already documented on this show. And so for them to finally overcome that hurdle just to get back to victory lane, given what happened last year, that's one piece of it. But the other piece is, Chris has been called a road course ringer multiple times now. And he really doesn't admit that. He admits that he wasn't a road course guy, but to finally see him get that's kind of another piece that was kind of cool. And after everything settled and the dust settled, and we left the media center for the last time. Chris looked over and he was like, "Hey, I've now won on every style of racetrack." And
Yeah,
we're like, "Yep, absolutely, you have."
pretty
So,
good.
yeah, that was two cool things that came from Watkins Glen.
What
For
is
sure.
Buescher's road course background? Did
Um,
because he was mostly oval, right? He was mostly
Yeah, he
normal.
was mostly an oval guy. Started out on two wheels, and then that kind of started at like a quarter mile level, Texas Motor Speedway, those smaller tracks. So I mean, he'd obviously raced road courses over his career, but definitely was not an IMSA guy or a sports car guy. None of that. It's just one of those things I think those type of guys pick up on and learn, and Chris did that.
Was it when you have a win like that? Certainly, it's a big deal. Brad didn't have success in the playoff, and that's he just had a lot of bad luck. And I'm sure, like when you have only two teams, the past month emotionally has been like what in Concord, North Carolina?
Yeah, it's kind of on the edge of your seat, honestly. You kind of, and that's the thing with this playoff format. You go into the weekend knowing where you stand, right? And you can kind of tell 100 laps in to say Bristol. We kind of knew what was shaping out, unfortunately. But yeah, you never can predict it, right? Like we went to Watkins Glen with Brad still in playoffs. Chris obviously wasn't, but that doesn't mean anything to these guys that are working on the car, and to the cars themselves. We still show up to race just like everybody else does, which is why our playoff format's so unique in the sport. So yeah, it kind of goes back to a lot of people can show up at many different times. You saw that this weekend at Kansas, and I think that same guy kind of stunk up the crowd last year at Phoenix
Yeah,
in the championship race. So you never know. It's wild.
never know. You are from the state of Alabama, right, Brandon?
Correct. Yep.
So Talladega's this weekend, and it's an event. It is people watching par excellence.
Absolutely.
What does Talladega represent to people from Alabama? What is the reputation of it? What is the thought like for Alabama? What is it, Alabamians? What's the
Yeah,
thought?
that's a good question. I've never thought about it that way. I would say, to kind of loosely answer the question, um, there's a lot of people in this state that are not racing fans. They don't follow NASCAR. They have no idea what's going on every weekend at the racetrack, but they've been to Talladega and they know what Talladega is, and they know people that go there every year. So like, I guess to answer your question, it's a tradition in some ways. It's like a family thing. Everybody just come along. We got a campsite, that type of thing. And I would even venture to say that a lot of those, Chris, they might not even watch the race. They just go to hang out with their friends for 2 or 3, 4 days. So um, to say it's a field party might be a little bit accurate, although they might not want it referred to as such. But um, yeah, it's a time for sure to be had. And there's a lot of good tracks that have great camping spots, but Talladega is certainly top of the
It's
list.
certainly one of them, no doubt. It is a camper's. I don't know if it's paradise, but well, maybe somebody's paradise. It's a certain
Absolutely.
kind of person's paradise.
That's right.
I'll tell you that. Might be another person's hell, quite frankly, but it is a certain person's paradise. There's no question about that. Brandon Lee with us, who is the senior director of communications for RFK. So Dega is different. You have see from your job perspective, what's different from Mike Herman is that you're just kind of around the track at the beginning. You're not, preparing a car or something like that. So what is the weirdest crap you've seen at Talladega? What are some of the things you're like, I question why I got into the sport sometimes with these people walking around? I'm sure you have some stories.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. And this will kind of tie back to you'll get this answer from some drivers, and I've seen it and lived it. The things that fans come up to drivers and ask for them to sign will blow your mind.
Really?
Um, yes, and you'll see this anywhere, but at Talladega, you'll see some even crazier stuff. There's a really good feed after the race weekend that Talladega puts on their social media channels where it's the things left behind. That's a little unrelated to what we're talking about, but I would just encourage you if you've never seen that to go see that after the race weekend. But yeah, man, you'll have fans come up like, "Hey, we signed my baby," and it's like, well, hold on a minute, we're not signing
What?
humans here. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of drivers that kind of have a set of rules they live by. I heard somebody one time say, "I'll sign anything but body parts and checks." So you take that for what
Has
it's worth,
anybody
but
tried to have him sign a check?
I don't know. I don't
I
know. I'm
wouldn't be
sure somebody
shocked
has
with those
somewhere.
Talladega folk. They try to
Yeah,
sneak one in there.
absolutely.
It's wild, man. It really is. It is I know people that are listening, they're NASCAR people. It's NASCAR radio, but for people that are outside of NASCAR that know nothing about it, I'm like, this is one where you just go and observe. And even if you don't know anything about racing, just this is an Americana event that you'll never get anywhere else but
Right.
Talladega, Alabama. So just take it in and absorb because it's something else. Let's break. We got more with B. Lee when we come back. I want to get into the sponsors this weekend. We got some great sponsors on the car. Certainly, Build Submarines is back involved. I know there's a great medication as well. So we'll get into that when we come back right here with B. Lee on Backstretch Banner. We're back, Backstretch Banner, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. I'm Chris Childers. Great to have you guys with us today as we shine a light on the greatest race team in all the world, Roush Fenway Keselowski. We have a great race coming up. Talladega is this weekend on our cars on the number 6. We got buildsubmarines.com, which has been my favorite sponsor that is new this year. They are so cool because all they're trying to do is say, hey, we got these really cool careers where you can build a submarine and help your country. Come on. I mean, are you kidding? That might be the coolest sponsor ever. And next Latal this week on the number 17, great medication. I know Chris Buescher going to be riding around, making that thing pop this weekend. So, Brandon, the sponsors are incredible. And I believe Build Submarines has a neat activation at Talladega, don't they, coming up?
That's right. Yep. They've done this a couple of times before, Chris, but Build Subs will have a 50-foot inflatable submarine
Huh,
in the fan zone this weekend at Talladega.
nice.
So it sounds made up, but I promise it's not. It's so big it has to come in like this crate thing loaded in a trailer that our team has to, get on display. So if you're out in the area, obviously stop by and see it because I don't know when else we'll ever see a 50-foot inflatable submarine. So pretty cool deal. Obviously very unique. They
Can you
they
go
like to
in
do
it
those
or
types
is
of
it just
things.
there to look
I
at?
believe it's just there. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just there. But
Because
obviously
that would be
really cool.
cool. Yeah, if you
Yeah.
could go like walk around the inflatable sound like a bounce house that's 50 feet long. It would be pretty awesome, but
Yeah.
that's cool nonetheless, man. And it really, buildsubmarines.com, give us an idea of the partnership because they have been heavily involved. Every race I've been to, I think they've sponsored, and I've seen a lot of their people at the track, so they seem very invested in this relationship.
Yeah, they're very active. And at this point we're in year two, but the first full season with them. And they do a really good job of activating using their assets. They tend to have at track activations quite often. They generally always host people in a more executive suite level area. And if you look even outside of our partnership, it kind of proves what the point they're trying to drive home. They recently announced the baseball game that's going to be at Bristol next year.
Yeah.
Their name's all over that. They're now all over college athletics. I know they mentioned both Alabama and Auburn here in the state
Mhm.
recently. So yeah, they're even outside of what we're doing. They're what their awareness they're driving. It's obviously making a huge difference for them and both our country. So we're glad to partner alongside them.
It's cool. It is my favorite from a I'm such a patriotic dude, so anytime you can do something like that, uh, it's awesome because submarines are cool and
Absolutely,
the Navy's cool. So you know what I
that's
mean?
right.
Like you think of all that, and I think it's one of the neater sponsors you can have. BuildSubmarines.com. Next, let's all for the 17, certainly a great sponsor in their own right. Talladega is a high visibility race. I'm curious, does now that the playoffs are over, does your job change at all, or is it just, standard messaging from you?
Yeah, inevitably a little bit. I would say it changes in the sense that the asks from NASCAR are a little bit less, right?
Okay.
Obviously storylines are focusing on the now 12 playoff guys, and that's probably the way it should be, right? So, not to say there aren't obligations for our drivers. Obviously, there's still partner obligations, but from a media standpoint, yeah, it's certainly diminished. But that's how it goes, and obviously you have to roll the punches.
Roll with the punches, no doubt about it. We've had a fun show today. Want to thank everybody for helping us put it on. Kevin Woods, who's been on this show a bunch of times as a co-host, he does a great job helping us out every week. Elijah, certainly Thomas Burfield, who runs this thing. I usually thank you, Brandon, but you're sitting here with me, so thanks to your
Well,
face.
thank you.
A lot of wonderful things going on behind the scenes to help put this thing on every single week. RFK in general, one final thought as we get to Talladega. The goal this week in Alabama for this team is what?
Win, no doubt about it. We've been close there a lot of times recently. Obviously, Chris won Daytona last year in a pretty similar style track. So at this point, nothing else to lose. Just go try to win every week. That's it.
Have we checked on Kevin Woods over the Auburn Tigers lately? Is he melting
Uh,
down?
he's working through it like we all have to sometimes. So that's part of being a fan.
Woods, it's no way to live. You should have been an Alabama fan, like a respectable human, and had a good life. But you had to choose the losers, and it happens. I kid. I have much love for Auburn, but Brandon Lee, much love for you. A pleasure to hang out today. And are you going? Are you going to be in and around the muckety muck of Talladega?
I will be there a couple of days early this time. So yeah,
Look at you.
home track. Why not?
Look at you. That's it's a cool place, man. I said it earlier. It's like 30 minutes from Birmingham, but it feels like it's in another country from
100%.
Birmingham.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is like Birmingham is one of my favorite cities. Great place, buttoned up, beautiful places to eat that I like to go to, like Hot and Hot and all those. And Talladega's not that, but it's so close.
Absolutely.
Brandon, thank you, my friend. It's always a pleasure to get to talk to you and hang out.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, that will do it again. You heard all the thank yous. I am Chris Childers, and we appreciate we appreciate everybody for listening to Backstretch Banner with SiriusXM on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio.